The topic today is objection rebuttals that diffuse common sales objections. So let's just jump right in. Have you ever experienced a prospect saying some of these to you? I imagine if you've registered and you're attending this webinar, you probably have. And even if you weren't here, I would imagine you have because these are very common. These come up time and time again. We want to talk to you today about how to respond to these. Me personally, I think that if you're a salesperson or you're a sales manager, and if there was one area that you were going to work on, if you were going to say, I'm going to only improve one thing and everything else I'm just going to do what I always do, I would say that one thing should be improving how you deal with objections. And this is a short list. I mean, let's see, we only have, 10 objections here. So there's really not a whole lot to really work on if we're just only going to prepare for these. And if you only prepared for these 10, you would greatly improve your ability, your results when you're prospecting, because these come up so often. Now, you should add to this list if you're really working on your objection handling skills. There's probably about 5 objections, or maybe more, maybe less, that are specific to your product that you would add to this list. Now, you're going to have to do that on your own. You can take some stuff that we talk about here today and maybe apply it to your industry or your product. But what we can do is talk about the common objections that we all face, because these are the same for all of us. What we'll do today is I'm going to talk about some concepts on the front end, and then we're going to go through each of these objections one at a time, and I'm going to go through real examples of what you could use if you think that they're good or you like them. You have 3 different directions you can go in the way that I see the world with how you can handle an objection that you receive. So your option 1 is comply. Now, this is basically the objection. The prospect delivers an objection to you and you give in to it. An example of this would be a prospect saying, I'm not interested, and you say, okay, sorry to bother you. At some point you need to comply. Because, and I'll just give you an example. I was on the phone call with a salesperson, and I was not interested, or I was giving him objection after objection, and he just kept trying to overcome it. And at some point, you're going to annoy somebody. And if you begin to annoy your prospect, selling is hard enough when you aren't being a nuisance, if you're just being a salesperson. So if you're starting to annoy the prospect, that's just going to make things difficult for you. So at some point you need to comply. What you don't want to do is just comply on the first objection that you hear. So a rule of thumb that you might apply is try to respond to objections in 2 to 3 different ways, and on the third or fourth attempt, comply with either that objection, or if it's the third different objection that you've received. Basically what I'm saying is, try something else without giving in, but at some point realize that, okay, you're going to start to annoy the prospect. So basically complying is giving in. Now, option 2 is to overcome the objection. So this is basically the prospect objects and you're trying to resolve and completely change the prospect's mind. Let me give you an example of that. So if the prospect says, I'm not interested, to overcome that objection would be, the prospect saying they're not interested. So to overcome that is to try to make them interested, or make them feel like not feel like they're not interested. So an example of that might be responding with something. If someone says, I'm not interested, you might say, oh, yeah, I understand. But we also have a 30-year warranty. I didn't get a chance to talk to you about that. So basically you're trying to make them more interested by including more details. The third option is to deflect the objection. So it's kind of like, if you kind of look at this picture here, this is like 2 karate guys, right? And one guy's trying to kick, and the other guy's sort of pushing the kick away. And think of that as deflecting the objection. The overcome the objection would be trying to hit the guy back, or the girl, well, whatever. And the comply would be being kicked and falling down. So I'm not really a karate knowledgeable gut person or enthusiast, but I do know that, if someone's trying to hit you and you deflect it, you're pushing it away, so that your goal is, if anything, just to keep standing, to stay in the game, and push the hit away so that you can continue on. It's not necessarily to really just take the prospect down or take the opponent down if we're thinking about, karate or some fighting or something. So let's apply that to objections. So if a prospect delivers an objection to you, maybe there's a way you can deflect it so that you don't necessarily resolve it. You don't take the hit dead on. You just kind of maybe let it glance off of you. So maybe you don't just totally ignore it and act like you didn't hear it, but maybe you're able to kind of push it away and stay in the game. That's actually what we're going to focus on here today. Is most of what we're going to talk about is deflecting objections. So before we look at those objections and we look at objection responses, I want to go through 4 concepts real quick. The first one being to try to understand the prospect and understand why are they giving you objections. I think trying to understand your opponent or the person you're interacting with is a good place to start really in any situation, especially relationships. And if you think of the prospect and the salesperson being a relationship, it definitely applies there, but you could apply this to your children, to your spouse, to a negotiation, whatever. But let's start with trying to understand the prospect. They give you objections, sometimes not really because they truly believe the objection they're telling you. They're giving you the objection to get rid of you. And one of the reasons why they're trying to get rid of you is because they sense that you're a salesperson. And you're going to try to start to sell to them because that's what salespeople do. And they don't feel like being sold to, maybe because they're working or because sometimes just a salesperson trying to sell to you is kind of annoying. So they don't want to be sold to, so that they start to put their guard up. And they also might genuinely, if we look at it optimistically and say that they're not getting annoyed and it's not that, they might genuinely, if they're genuinely hearing you out, they might not think that they need what you sell. We'll talk a little bit about pain here in a minute, and that people sometimes buy stuff to resolve pain or avoid pain. Well, sometimes we have pain that we don't know exists, and that's called latent pain. So not to get into too much detail about the concept of pain, but maybe they just don't know that they need what you have, and when they say I'm not interested, it's because they think they don't genuinely need it. So that's one reason why they might be delivering objections to you. Another thing is that a lot of what we're talking about here today is prospecting, cold prospecting, reaching out proactively outbound to prospects. And when you do that, you most likely are reaching prospects that are not in buying mode. If you think about a prospect periodically buying or needing the service you sell, and that's even an optimistic mindset that you sell something and that at some recurring time they're going to need what you sell. I mean, some products that's not even the case. Either people don't actively look what you sell, or they don't change that often. All I'm trying to say here is that when you make the call, if we're selling over the phone or sending an email, whatever, when the prospect receives your message, most likely they're not sitting there, searching for the product you sell on the internet, looking at pricing and looking at vendors. It's just most likely that's not the case. So those are some of the reasons why they throw up their guard when you talk to them, and they start to give you objections. So if you agree with that understanding of the prospect, and I don't think too much of that is a stretch, you could say that some of it isn't always the case with everybody you talk to, but I think we could probably agree that most of those are pretty safe assumptions. Then one thing that we should do is to try to avoid sounding like a salesperson. We're going to spend most of the time here today talking about how to respond to objections, but you know what? If you do this, then you're going to get a lot fewer of objections. Because if you minimize how much you sound like a salesperson trying to sell something, then you're going to trigger less guardedness, and you're going to put the prospect in less of a position where they throw up their objection to try to get rid of you. I always kind of go back to looking at the sales process, and I think this is really important when you think about how you respond to an objection. So if we just kind of break down the sales process and think about the first time that you reach out to a prospect or speak to them, and this could either be over the phone or it could be in an email or talking to someone at an event, but you have that initial contact. And for the purposes of today, maybe let's just consider that a cold call, because that's where or a phone prospecting call, because that's where a lot of these objections we're talking about come up. So you have this initial contact, it's over the phone, it might be a 2 to 5 minute conversation. From there, most likely you're trying to progress the prospect to a larger conversation. In a lot of cases, that might look like an appointment. You might call it an appointment, maybe you don't. Maybe you call it a meeting, maybe you call it maybe it's just a longer conversation you have over the phone. But the way that I see things, and sometimes you do this at the same time as the cold call. You just try to have a prospect on the phone for 10-15 minutes on your first call with them. That's fine if that's what works best for your product. But the way I just see this is that those are two separate steps, and then the second step is some sort of longer conversation. And then a third step might be more of a formal meeting, meaning a presentation, or it could be a formal presentation of slides. It could be a presentation of a quote or a proposal. But I kind of like to break the early part of a sales process into those three stages. That's really important and helpful with thinking about how to respond to objections, because when you respond to an objection, you might want to start to think about what your goal is. And let's go back to those objection handling responses. When you try to overcome an objection, so if someone's saying I'm not interested and you're trying to make them interested, what you're trying to do is more in line with trying to sell the product. And I don't necessarily think that your goal should be to try to sell the product in an initial contact. Your real goal in the initial contact is to try to move the prospect to the meeting or to the next step. So if you do work with kind of scheduling appointments in your type of business, your goal should be to set the appointment. And so if someone says I'm not interested, that's not even a valid objection to not have an appointment. Or let me use a different objection. If someone says I don't have budget right now, that's a valid reason to not buy the product, because they don't have budget, so they can't buy the product. So that's valid. But if your goal is not to sell the product, if your goal is to sell the meeting, then I don't have budget is technically not, it doesn't even connect with what you're trying to accomplish. Now, someone saying my calendar's completely booked up for the next 18 months, that's a valid objection for not having a meeting, So, but anyways, what I want to focus on here is the goal is to get to the next step, which is to the meeting. And so when you come up against those common objections, keep that in mind. The goal is to get to the meeting. So what we should do is not try to overcome those objections. And there's a lot of reasons why in this first step, there's a lot of reasons why you don't try to overcome. It takes time. It's difficult to change someone's mind. You just don't even have to try to overcome the objection. But I will say, when you get to that meeting and that appointment, maybe you do want to try to overcome an objection. So I'm not necessarily saying to never try to overcome objections. I mean, if someone has an objection and it's a legitimate thing for them to be concerned about, sometimes you do need to deal with it head on, especially if it means that they're never going to be able to be fit with your product. Then you don't want to necessarily spend a lot of time trying to sell to them and waste your valuable time. But you don't need to identify that before the appointment. Let's get into that in the appointment. So according to the sales process, let's focus on deflecting till we get to the appointment. Then in the appointment, we might deflect the objection or try to overcome it. And then if we get into some sort of formal discussion, then we're primarily only trying to overcome objections. I mean, we need to deal with the prospect's concerns and really address everything. But for the objection responses that I'm going to show you, they align with you kind of agreeing with this. And so it can help to kind of have your hands around this or agree with this philosophy in terms of delivering what we're going to recommend you do. The last thing I want to talk about before we get to the responses is your sales pitch. And a lot of times people think of a sales pitch as something that someone says when they're trying to close the sale or when they're delivering a presentation. I see a sales pitch as everything you say when you're talking to prospects. So what I think that most salespeople deliver more of a product centered, pushy sales pitch, and it looks something like this. This is the company I work for. This is what we sell. This is how it works. This is how you can purchase it and what it costs. And every conversation is focused on closing the sale. And even if the product is not a one-call close, and I'll give you an example. I had a cold call from a payroll services provider. And all of our questions were around, are you looking to make a change regarding your payroll provider? Well, that's even knowing it's not a one-call close, and if we were to start discussions, we would have lots of conversation and steps. But her questioning was all around, are you looking to do something? Yes, no. Do you need what I sell? Yes, no. So the whole pitch is centered around selling the product, closing the sale. Now, what we want you to do is have more of a consultative approach. So instead of focusing on the product, you focus on how the product helps. You focus on the problems your product helps to resolve. We want you asking good questions. So good questions that you should ask are questions to see if the prospect has the problems that you help to fix. You know, I think that like the question of what keeps you up at night is too broad. It's not a good question. Question, like if you go to the doctor, your doctor doesn't say, you know, what keeps you up at night or what's bothering you, what in general in life are you concerned about or whatever. Your doctor will say, does it hurt when I push this? Does it hurt when I do this? Are you experiencing this? And the doctor does that to get to what's going on with you. Well, your questions as a salesperson should be the same. If you have some customer examples, use those in your pitch. If you differ in some sort of way, highlight that. If you can deliver some sort of ROI, highlight that. And the goal of your sales pitch should be starting the conversation and keeping it going, not necessarily closing the sale. So the reason why I bring that up is because your objection responses are part of your sales pitch, and you can use these thoughts and points in your objection responses. That's what I'm going to do here today. Now, the thing is that most salespeople are on the left because the left is easier. You know what you sell, you know where you work, and you can talk about that stuff without really putting any thought into it. To really communicate on the right, you kind of have to stop and organize your thoughts, and that takes you a little bit of time, a little bit of brain power. It requires you to stop selling for a minute or two and to organize everything. So, but in order to help you with delivering the objection responses I'm going to give you, it would help you to kind of organize your thoughts with that. And let me go through an example of how you could organize your thoughts. And I'm going to kind of go through this, which is I'm going to use an example. So if we start with a product, and a product that we'll use just as an example is web design services. So if we think about the features of that product, web design services, this company helps to build new websites, make website changes, help with search engine optimization, graphic design work, right? So you remember I said most people have a product selling sales pitch? Those people just stay over here. And I get emails every day from web design companies, and the email looks like this. Hey, I'm with this company. We do this type of web work, and this is how much it costs and whatnot. That's what their email looks like right here, essentially. So what you can do for this process is start with that, and then brainstorm the benefits that your service offers. So if we look at the benefits of web design, it helps to improve design traffic conversion rates, helps to improve traffic, helps to improve SEO, generates more leads through their website, improves the amount of revenue that a company generates through their website. Those are benefits, right? So that's the value. And just by that alone, we're able to communicate more powerfully than if we just talk about the product. And the people that email me every day, they rarely talk about those things, and that's what they should be talking about. So we also want to think about the problems that you help to fix. And I'm sure if we had a whiteboard, you could probably throw a couple pain points at me. But one thing that you can do is look at the benefits that you offer, and for each benefit, then there can be a corresponding pain point for each benefit. I mean, it's not to say that's just a tactic you can use to develop a list of pain points. You could probably think of some pain points on your own, but that's just one process you can go through. And then what we want to do is we want to think of questions to ask. And so you might say, yeah, I agree with you. I should be asking more questions or better questions, but I don't know what questions to ask. Well, look at the pain points that you fix. And so here are the pain points for that a web design company might help a small business with. And then for each of those pain points could be a question. Could be probably more than one question for each pain point. But if we're just kind of doing one for one, we kind of go through this process and we came up with 6 benefits that led us to 6 pain points, and that led us to 6 qualifying questions. Now, you don't have to do 6. I would say at a minimum you want to do probably 3, and you could probably do up, more than 6. You could do 10. But one thing I want to point out is that if you go through that process, and we're here talking about objections, right? But if you go through that process, then you can have your value proposition, and you can have your list of questions to ask, and you can have some common pain examples. And if you add to that, your company and product info, and then you put around that sort of an introduction and a close, language, then you essentially have a call script that you can use for a consultative selling, cold calling conversation. That's not what we're here today to talk about. We definitely help you with that, and we have other webinars on that. But what I want to point out is, remember I said we're deflecting. We're the karate guy that's pushing the kick away and the hit away. Well, I'm going to go through a bunch of objection responses here, and if you don't really pay attention, it's going to look like I'm giving you a lot of different things to memorize and learn. But the reality is that when you get an objection, you can deflect back to these different sections of your script. So what you need to do first is sort of organize your sales pitch, and that will give you a script. And then when you learn about this objection handling methodology, you don't have to learn a bunch of objection responses. You just need to learn where to deflect back to in your script when you get those. So let's get into those objection responses. That's why you're really here. So I'm going to go through each objection one at a time. So an objection you might get when you're calling someone is they say, I'm busy right now. Well, deflect to your sales process. So kind of deflect. So to comply with someone saying I'm busy right now would be to say, okay, sorry to bother you, and you move on. To overcome this, and I've gotten someone trying to overcome this, is to try to see that, oh, it's not worth your time. Is it worth your time to have a 10-minute conversation with me that could save you $1 million, whatever? That's trying to overcome someone, to get them to change their mind from being busy to I'm available. We don't need to do that. Let's deflect to, okay, I tell you what, I can be very brief, or I can call you back at another time. Or another option is okay, when's the best time for me to call you back? So that's something to say to that objection response. This is probably a good time for me to point out that none of the objection responses I give you are going to be like this magic bullet that's going to work every time and it's going to make someone buy from you. These are just really effective consultative selling ways to communicate to people. And if you do these over a large number of calls, then you're going to communicate more effectively, more professionally, and people are going to respond to you better. You're going to get beat up less, and your job's going to be easier. You're not going to have as much anxiety when you sell. So keep that in mind, that I'm going to show you a bunch of responses. None of them are just going to be like gold. What they also won't be, and I've seen this from other people, there will be zero manipulation here. I see a lot of objection handling responses as trying to tricking someone into giving you their time. We're not tricking anyone. We're communicating. We're going to communicate how we help, the problems we fix, in a very professional way. And and people might still shoot us down, but so just keep that in mind. Let's keep moving. So what's this in regards to? This is one of the most common objections you'll receive from gatekeepers. They use this to get rid of you. And I have a whole webinar on dealing with gatekeepers that gets into this in more detail, but a gatekeeper will be tasked with keeping salespeople out. And so in order to do that, they want to determine, are you a salesperson trying to sell something? And so they will ask the question, what is this in regards to? Now, if you comply with this objection, it would be to say, oh, I'm trying to call. It would be saying, I'm trying to call you guys to sell you something, which you would never say that. But you might say, well, I'm calling to schedule a meeting with Mrs. Jones to learn about her needs, which means I'm a salesperson. So you don't want to comply, which is giving a direct answer to to their question, which makes you sound like a salesperson. So what I want to show you this trick. You can deflect this objection to your value points. So the gatekeeper says that and respond with this. Well, the reason why I'm reaching out to you guys is we help businesses to basically improve the design, traffic, and conversion rates for their website. And just sit there. Now that's not necessarily one thing this doesn't do is it doesn't tell the gatekeeper, salesperson trying to sell something. It's kind of a curveball. I'm not going to say that they'll say, oh well, let me connect you with Mrs. Jones or let me put you on her calendar, but it doesn't give them the initial thing that they will look for that says, oh, we don't need any, we're not interested. So try that out. Is this a sales call? This is basically the same objection as what is this in regards to. So you can reply to it with the exact same response. In fact, I'm going to go through 10 objections here today, and there's multiple responses for each objection, and a lot of them are exactly the same because we're going to deflect back to the same section of our call script. This is basically a deflecting back to the beginning the beginning of your call script, because this is a way to open your cold call. Is when someone answers the phone, after you've introduced yourself, you might say, well, the reason why I'm reaching out to you, Ms. Jones, is that we work with businesses and we help them to design improve the design, traffic, and conversion rates for their website. I'm not sure if you guys are a good fit for what we do, so I was calling you with a question or two. That can be the beginning of your script. By the way, I should point this out. There's multiple bullet points here. You don't need to read them all. These are just like different options for you to use. You could, depending on the prospect that you're calling, and your research, you might want to say one bullet point over another. You might say 2 or 3. So you just have these different options. Just want to be sure to point that out. I'm not interested. So this is a big one, right? People say this all the time. And so how to respond to this is to deflect to your pre-qualifying questions. So if someone says, I'm not interested, let's not try to overcome that to try to make them interested. That's a very difficult thing to do, right? Especially when they have that mindset. So you might say something like, "Oh, yeah, hey, I understand. Hey, but if I could ask you real quick, how well is your website doing with being found on search engines?" So I just deflected. And by the way, this section right here is the central part of my cold call script. So again, I'm not teaching you more stuff to remember. We're just deflecting to the center part of our call script. If anything, we're just bouncing right to the key thing in our call script we want to get to. So we go from the prospect getting rid of us to just getting to exactly what we want to get to. So now let me just teach you right now. The methodology doesn't end there, right? Because the logical thing that's going to happen is, most likely the prospect will answer your question if you do this in a very consultative, professional way. At this point, it's not likely that the prospect is going to say, you're going to ask that question, the prospect's going to say, I told you, I'm not interested. They probably won't do that. Now, that you might reach that type of a point in a conversation when you never give in and you just keep trying to overcome objections, and you sound like a pushy salesperson. But if you do this out of the gate, most likely they will respond to you. They will answer your question. And then what you can do is you can ask them another question, or you can drill into their answer that they gave you. The methodology technically works like this. These questions are designed to figure out if they need what you have. So if someone were to say, if you were to ask how well they're doing with getting found on search engines, and they say, well, we don't get a lot of traffic through search engines, and we don't really rank real well. Oh, well, that's why I'm reaching out to you. I want to learn more about that, and we help companies with that. And I have a couple more questions with you to find out what you've tried in the past and what you're doing. We might be able to improve that for you, but it's a longer conversation. Can I put 20 minutes on your calendar for tomorrow morning? So that was basically me going from the prospect objected, I deflected to my central part of my script, which was the question. I got a good answer, and I went for the close. So that's kind of how the methodology works. But the starting place is knowing where to deflect to. Another objection is someone says, just send me some information. So to comply with this would be to go, oh, sure, yeah, I'll definitely send you some information. And then you spend 20 minutes putting together this beautiful email that you feel really good about because you think that they're interested because they asked you to send them your information. You spend all this time, you send them the email, they delete it without even reading it because they were just trying to get rid of you. It's a polite way for prospects to get rid of you without hurting your feelings, and your feelings didn't get hurt, and that's good, but you ended up wasting 20 minutes putting together your information. So you don't want to do that. You want to keep the conversation going, right? You want to push that hit away and keep standing and keep the fight going. So deflect back to your pre-qualifying questions. And oh, by the way, so this is an exact same response to what we just went through, except it says, so that I know what best to send you, can I ask you real quick? So there's a little bit of a buffer there before you get to your questions. You're almost using their objection as a reason to get into your line of questioning. So someone says, yeah, I don't have time for this right now, just send me your info. Hey, yeah, I'll certainly do that, so that I know exactly what to send you. Can I ask you real quick, how important is it for you to get more leads through your website? And so again, you go through that process where if you get a good answer, maybe you could schedule the meeting. And actually there is a typo here. Instead of I understand, it should say I can certainly do that. So it should say I can certainly do that, so that I know exactly what best to send you. Can I ask you real quick? Now you could get just send me some information at another point in the call, which is late in the call. And maybe late in the call you've already asked a bunch of your questions. So you can't really like just keep asking question after question, and this is like maybe when you go for the meeting, you've asked some questions and you're like, hey, I think we should meet. It sounds like we might be able to help you guys. And then they go, I don't know if I have time for that. Can you just send me your information for now? So that it's kind of like a non-committal objection. So it's slightly different. The early time that you get this objection is the blow-off. They haven't even really heard you out. You haven't asked any questions. So then you want to ask your questions. But if you get it late in a call, here's just a response. You can deflect back to your sales process. So you can say something like this. Sure, I definitely can. Actually, there's a lot of information that I can send over to you. If you have some questions about anything, it might be easier and quicker to have a brief conversation over the phone on another day instead of me sending over a ton of documents for you to go through. So again, whether or not that's perfect or not, I can't 100% say, or I won't make that guarantee, but it's something for you to say to deflect the kick, so that you keep standing and you might stay in there, but the kick still might hit you, might take you out. It happens. So let's keep moving on. We already use someone for that. So this is a very common objection. You sell something, they're already purchasing from someone that sells what you sell. So you have some options here. One option is that you could instead of just saying, oh, okay, and to overcome would be like to say, oh, okay, well, to talk about your product. By the way, you remember I had the two sales pitches. One was a product pitch and one was a consultative pitch. And I told you that most people are always on the left side of that. And so if you're always on the left, you're always going to try to overcome the objections by talking about your company and product. So if someone says we already use someone for that, to try to overcome that would be to say, oh, okay, well, do they do this? But we do this, or we're better. You try to make them interested in you and make them switch. Well, you could just deflect questioning to their current provider. So you could say something like, "Oh, great, I see. Hey, well, how long have you been with you? How long have you been with them? How's everything going? What types of things are they providing for you? What do you think they could be doing better? So if there's anything you could change, what would it be? When was the last time you considered other options?" So some questions you could ask. They're very, very professional and consultative selling questions. So it's a very fair response for you to have if a prospect says we already use someone. You have some other options though. So you could use that same option that I've shown you on other objections, which is to go back to your pre-qualifying questions. So someone says, hey, we already use someone. Oh, yeah, hey, I understand. But could I ask you real quick, how much of a priority is it for you guys to improve the traffic of your website? So, and I mean, that's applicable because let's just dig into this example right here. So they sense that we're a web design company in this example, and they say, oh, we already work with someone that helps us with our website. That's really fair. I mean, that's the real world. Probably let's say every established business is working with someone for their website. But a fair question is to say, hey, how much of a priority is it for you to increase your website traffic? They might be working with someone, but they still might have this goal of increasing web traffic that their current provider isn't helping them with. So I'm just trying to demonstrate that even if they're with someone, these are great questions to ask, and it depending on their answer, that then you might get a reason to schedule a meeting with them. By the way, let me point out that, I mean, how to ask these questions and create these questions is a whole topic in itself. We've done a webinar for an hour on creating questions and asking good questions, so you might want to look for that. But just so you know, you might ask these questions. A good answer is that they might have an issue or need, and it's something you could help with. A bad answer is that they're good. It's sort of like, how happy are you with this that going on with you? Oh, it's great. Well, to use an example here, let's look at question number 2. How important is it for you to improve your website conversion rates? And they might say, we convert really well through our website. We have some buttons and call to action buttons, and it converts really well. Well, that's kind of a bad answer for you, because if that's something that you improve, they don't really have that pain. So if you ask 2 or 3 of these questions and all of your answers are that they're good, then they might not be a good prospect for you to sell to, and then that's when their objection becomes really legitimate, that they don't need you, and that's when you can start to comply. And there's another response for, we already use someone for that. You could deflect to your pain points. So when we're going through the building of the sales pitch, we came up with value points, we came up with pain points, we came up with questions to ask. Here's an example of using pain points as your objection response. So you can say, oh yeah, hey, I understand. Hey, you know what? Sometimes when we talk with businesses, though, we notice that they often express challenges with, that they need to find a way to get more website traffic. They're not getting found enough through search and organic SEO. It can be difficult to find ways to generate more revenue through online and through their website. Are you concerned about any of those, or you're happy with those areas, or your current provider is meeting your needs in all those areas, and you're pushing back on them, and they might say, hey, I mean, let's time out here. They might say, no, we're great. Well, you've done what you needed to do. They gave you an objection, you pushed back, and they push back on to you. You move on, or but they might say they're doing okay, or they might say, yeah, that they aren't helping us in those particular areas. Okay, well, and that gives you a reason to close for the meeting. Let's move on to the next objection. We are not looking to make any changes right now. So that's very similar to, a lot of these objections are very similar. I'm not interested. We already use someone. We're not making any changes right now. Guess what? The objection response is exactly the same here for those other objections. Hey, I understand, no big deal, but could I ask you real quick, how do you feel about the current design and layout of your website? You could also deflect that objection to your pain points, which is what we've already discussed. And there's another way to respond to this, which is, so we talked about deflecting to your questions, deflecting to your pain points. You can also deflect to your sales process. So if someone says, we aren't looking to make any changes right now, if you go back when I was talking about sales process, remember that I said the goal is not to sell the product, the goal is to sell the meeting. Well, you can be very transparent with the prospect and communicate that. So you could do that by saying something like, hey, I understand, hey, and I want you to know I'm not reaching out to you guys to try to sign you up and sell you anything today. More so, I'm just trying to open the dialogue between our two companies and have an initial conversation. Personally, I'd like to learn more about, you all, and possibly share some information about us if it makes sense and if it's appropriate. That way, when you are closer, when you are ready to look at this area closer, then you can know who we are and how we can help. So I'll time out or pause that. Again, I don't know if that wording is perfect, and I can't tell you that's going to work every time someone says we aren't looking to make any changes right now. But what you're doing there is you're trying to get the meeting. You're trying, let's say, let's go back to payroll services. That person was asking, she asked me, are you looking to make any changes with your payroll provider? I wasn't. I'm not. I'm still not right now. So uh, that's the salesperson trying to close the sale. And when the prospect says, I'm not looking at making any changes, that's a legitimate objection for not meeting to talk about purchasing. But it's not a reason. Like I've already said here, it's not a legitimate objection for not having a conversation. That payroll provider, I mean, I still probably wouldn't have met with her, by the way, but and this might happen to you, but she could have tried to just meet with me. Well, there's some things that were different about other payroll providers. It sounds like you guys are happy. You're not looking to make a change. I just want to. I service businesses in your area. I want to just start the conversation with you. Maybe in a year, you might start to think about making a change. When that time comes, I want you to know who I am. I want you to know how we're different and whatnot. So I'm not looking to put hours on your calendar. I'm not gonna go into it thinking that I'm getting an order. I just want to start the conversation. So I basically just totally rephrase this objection response in a different way. What I would want you to do is understand what you're trying to do here. You're deflecting to your sales process, which is trying to set the meeting and not sell the product. All right, let's keep moving on. We do not have any budget to spend right now. This is very common, right? You're cold calling someone, say, we don't have any budget, so no reason to continue. Well, deflect your questions. Oh yeah, hey, I understand, but can I ask you real quick, how important is it for you to get more leads through your website? You could also deflect your pain points. So we've already talked about that. It's the exact same response. If you haven't figured it out yet or not, I'm really showing you. I'm going through 10 objections, and for each objection, I'm showing you like 2 or 3 responses. But I'm really pretty much showing you about 5 different things to learn. They're not even 5 new things because they're part of your call script. So if you use them as your call script, you're basically learning 5 different ways to bounce the conversation back to. So, and then similar to what I just went through with we aren't looking to make any changes right now, a very similar response. This one is slightly different because and I'll go through the response because the response actually just, instead of it mentions the budget, but let me just go through it. So if someone says we don't have any budget right now, so there's no point in meeting. Hey, you know what? I understand, and I want you to know I'm not trying to sign you guys up and sell you anything. Just looking to open the dialogue between our two companies. I'd like to learn more about you and share some information about us. That way, when you begin to do your budget planning, or when your budget opens back up, you'll know who we are and how we can help. So the difference there is at the end of it, it's saying, when you begin to do your budget planning, because that's logical actually. If their reason for not meeting with you is that they don't have budget right now, then when they have budget, it's going to be too late for them to meet with you. Because when they're doing their budget planning is when they need to consider purchasing from you. So it's actually, if you think about it, the fact that they don't have budget right now is a reason why you need to meet right now. It's like, okay, well, you don't have budget right now. You're probably going to be doing budget planning soon. So that's what you need to start the conversation. So just something to think about there. And then call me back in X months. So again, you could deflect to your pre-qualifying question. So real early in a call, someone might say, well, we're doing pretty good. Call me back in 6 months. Hey, yeah, I can certainly do that. Just if I could ask you real quick, how important is it for you guys to improve your website conversion rates? And see, kind of the logic here is that these questions are tied to pain points. And if you ask them a question that identifies that there might be, not even that there is, that there might be a pain point, then that supports your case for meeting now versus 6 months. Because in theory, I mean, the perfect answer would be if you said how important is it for you to improve conversion rates, you wouldn't get this. But let's just say that the prospect said, our conversion rates are horrible and it's something we can't figure out. I mean, they wouldn't say it that plainly. They would, even if they felt that, they would like keep their cards closer to their chest. But even if they said that, that's a reason for you not to call them back in 6 months. I mean, that's when you can say, oh, well, that's why I'm reaching out to you, and we are experts at improving website conversion rate, and I want to share some examples with you how we've helped other companies. So I can certainly call you back in 6 months, but I mean, if that's an area that you're concerned about, would you want to talk about that area in particular and sooner versus later, or you still want to talk about that in 6 months? They might say, I still don't have time for it, so call me back in 6 months. But these questions might keep you in the game, keep the conversation going, and might help you to find a reason to go for the close. You can deflect to your pain points. So this is exactly the same as we showed you on other responses. Call me back in 6 months. I can certainly do that. Although, when I talk with other businesses, they often have challenges with not getting enough traffic, not being found through search engines, not getting enough leads. You're asking me to call you back in 6 months? Are you saying that those are not priorities for you during that time? I mean, we kind of, those are areas that we're experts in. So if I can help you, if we could have a productive conversation in those areas, is that a reason to meet again sooner versus later? And then you could deflect this objection back to the sales process. So again, this is similar. I won't read this again because I already went through this with the budget, and we're not looking to make any changes. It's the same response. I could certainly call you back in 6 months, but I'm not trying to sell you anything here today. So here's some optional language. We're talking about deflecting and diffusing objections, right? So this is additional stuff you could add into what I've already shown you. If you notice that most of the objection responses start out with "I understand" or "I can certainly do that," but if I could ask you real quick. So here's something you could put before the "if I could ask you real quick." So you might say something like, "Hey, I understand, and listen, I want you to know I'm not reaching out to you guys to sign you up and sell you anything." But and so what that can do is that can diffuse someone, and it's actually the truth, right? Because we're embracing that sales process. I mean, you don't need to say my goal is to set an appointment with you, but that's actually your goal. You don't even know if they're worth your time for you to do a demo for them, right? So and actually that's what's in this next option here, which is, hey, I understand, and I want you to know I'm not reaching out to you to try to sign you up for anything or sell you anything. You know what? I don't even know if you guys fit well with what we provide. So that's why I was just calling you with a few questions. If I could ask you real quick, how concerned are you about improving the conversion rate for your website? So those are like a few extra sentences that you can stick in addition to the objection responses that I gave you. They're optional. It kind of depends on your personality, your selling style. It might also depend on like how much time, like if you feel real rushed on a call, like someone seems real, maybe you've reached someone on a mobile phone or they seem like real frantic, maybe you skip this. So use it as you see fit. Now, one thing I want to point out is in the core concepts we talked about prospects give you objections because they don't want to be sold to. They think you're a salesperson trying to sell something. I also talked about one of the core concepts is to minimize how you sound like a salesperson. Then we talked about your sales pitch and to be more consultative. So all of the objection responses and those approaches all align with those concepts. You will trigger less guardedness. You'll sound less like a salesperson. You'll get less objections because you're not going to sound as much like a pushy salesperson. And when you do get the objections, they'll be easier for you to diffuse or deflect because you're going to sound more consultative. Now, like I said, I showed you a bunch of objections and a bunch of responses there, but the reality is that if you build your call script from our sales pitch approach, then all those objection responses are already part of your pitch and part of your script. So what you kind of, if you were to really fully adopt this, what you would be learning is just where to go in certain situations. So you know that your pre-qualifying questions are the center part of your pitch and your script. So, and by the way, those are actually probably the majority of the responses I showed you. So if you learned one thing here today, it would be when you get objections, most of the time you can just try to ask your questions anyways and just put a little, hey, I understand. Can I ask you real quick in front of your questions? It's not a lot to learn. It's just learning where to deflect to. Now, one thing you could do is you could take all this and build what we would call an objections map, so that it could just be a simple document, one column of your objections and one column of how you can respond to those. That should be able to improve how you're dealing with these objections. I would also push you to use a concept of reflect back to improve moving forward. When a call comes up, reflect back to think about what objections came up, whether or not they ended your call, how you responded to them, were the responses you delivered part of your pitch, or did you say something different? How did your response work? Use that reflection, and what you can do is then go back to your objections map, and you might be adding new objections, you might be changing your pitch and approach, and it should be this evolving thing. So that's really how you get to a level of mastery. That's pretty much it. Now, hopefully some of that helped you. So if it helped you, what I would ask is, if I helped you, there's a way for you to help us. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please, please, please like this video, comment, share the video, and or subscribe to our channel. All of these webinars get recorded and uploaded to YouTube. So if you miss any of our future webinars, if you subscribe to our channel, you can then be notified and see future trainings. That I want to show you something in Sales Scripter, which is our software application. So part of the approach to have your objection responses is to build your sales pitch. And that might look like a difficult thing to do. Actually, it's a process to go through it. It's actually not difficult. You just have to go through it. You could go through it in like an Excel spreadsheet and organize your thoughts. I just want to point out that Sales Scripter has a tool called the Sales Pitch Builder. And what it'll do is and if you recall from that slide, it was benefits, pain points, and questions, and it's these three areas that build up a lot of your call script, and it's those areas that become your objection responses. And the software basically takes you through a process, through a workflow, where you can organize your thoughts in those areas for what you sell and create a campaign basically for what you sell. And you'll notice this is web design for businesses. This is what I used for that example. And you might create more than one campaign because there might be different benefits for the different products you sell and the different buyers you sell to. But what I want to just show you is that when you go through that, Sales Scripter will provide you with a playbook. And I mentioned to you that you should build an objections map. Well, here's an objections map that the software builds for you. And I told you that you don't need to create these new responses, you just need to know where to deflect to. Well, since the software gets loaded in the Sales Pitch Builder with your points, it creates this automatically, because these are basically they're basically different parts of your call script. But here's an objections map, and I told you that if you go through that process, you can organize all that together and throw an introduction on the front and then some closing on the back, and you basically have a call script. So when you go through that, the Sales Pitch Builder with us, not only do you create your objection responses, you create your call script. Technically, it's the opposite. You create your call script. We create your call script, and from that, you end up with objection responses. I also want to show you that there's also an interactive view of this call script, so that you can have this up in front of you when you're making calls, and it's sort of like a dashboard. You can get to the key thing to say at the right time. But the reason why I'm bringing this up to show you today is that over here on the right side are all your objection responses. If you recall, today we talked about, is this a sales call? I'm busy right now. I'm not interested. And we talked about how you have a couple different responses for each objection. So all of what I went through is here already created. So certainly this is not free. There's a monthly subscription, but if you don't want to pay any money, you could watch this video and create all that stuff on your own. But if you kind of want to have it all in a real way that's really accessible, you kind of go through, answer these questions once, and then create a bunch of documents. Sales Scripter can help you with that. One last thing on Sales Scripter. Part of knowing what objection responses to create is to know what objections have come up. So if you happen to be a sales manager, we have a tool that makes it real easy for your salespeople to log the objections that they run into on every call, and then that can give you really valuable data on what objections are coming up for your sales team, and that is extremely powerful for your weekly sales team meetings as well as your one-on-one coaching, because instead of just saying, hey, what do you guys need from me in order to be more successful this week, you can say, hey guys, 22% of the time last week or last month, this objection came up. So let's role play that. Or how are you guys responding to that? Or is that on our objections map? Do we need to get this objection added to our objections map? Do we need to work on that response? So just the topic here is objection handling. So I just want to show you how Sales Scripter helps you with objection handling. Then just to kind of close, Sales Scripter is part of our overall system that we provide, which we call our smart sales system, and basically it helps you with your sales messaging. Your objection responses are part of your sales messaging, as are your voicemail scripts and email templates and whatnot. So our system not only helps you build your message, but it helps you with responses. Technically, the R in response is really what we're talking about here today with what we help with. We help you to respond to your prospect in the optimum way to stay in the conversations, to build interest, to generate leads. So that's the smart sales system. It's sort of delivered in 3 different ways. We provide it as a methodology. So I told you that all of our videos are on YouTube. So there's hundreds of videos actually for our company. But our whole sales training program, which objection handling is just one piece. We also have a gatekeeper module. By the way, the gatekeeper module, gatekeepers give you objections. The gatekeeper module overlaps with our objection handling. There's a little bit of overlap, but I would encourage you to also watch our gatekeeper module, because we really drill into concepts around dealing with gatekeepers, and it's not just about objection handling. So that complements this training really well. But we have modules on asking questions, building your pain points, finding your pain, building your scripts and whatnot. So it's all free, so you can check that out. There's also ebooks on our website. I have a book that I wrote, paperback book, on Amazon. And we provide training. A lot of our training is on YouTube for free, and we also deliver it in a more formal, paid, customized, or live structure for clients. But the reality is that we give away a lot of our training for free, just like you're getting this training here today for free. And the reason why is because our business model is to get you using our software. It's not that we want to trick you into using our software. It's that if you love these tactics and these approaches, sure, you can do a lot of it on your own, but you can do it more efficiently, more effectively with our software. So our strategy is help provide you as much training as you need or want for free, and then if you love our training and you end up watching all of our videos, you probably should spend the monthly subscription and purchase our software. And I don't push something on someone that they don't need. If you love our training, you will love our software. So check that out. And then the third leg of the 3-legged stool is professional services. So we'll certainly work with you on like a consulting basis or coaching basis. So basically, the SMART system, it helps you to bring clarity for what to say and do, or for your salespeople. And hopefully we've demonstrated that here today. We all get these objections. So hopefully today you have more clarity in what to do in those situations than what you did an hour ago. And thus, if that is correct, then we've just made you smarter. and you will ask more questions with our approach. And that's going to help you to appear smart. When a prospect says, I'm not interested, and you say, yeah, I understand, but can I ask you real quick? And then you ask a good question, you're actually going to appear smart. And by appearing smart, you're going to make a good impression with the prospects you talk to. So instead of looking like the pushy, annoying salesperson that they can't wait to get off the phone with, you're going to seem more consultative and more respectable. You're also going to get more information because you're going to be asking a lot of questions. And by having more information, that will help you to make better decisions. You know, like I said to you earlier, you might get some bad answers to the questions you ask, which means the prospect doesn't need what you sell. Well, that might mean you should move on. And by making that very educated decision, you might end up saving yourself time driving and meeting with someone that would have been completely wasted. So you're going to be able to make better decisions. And by making better decisions, you're going to be able to get better use out of your time, and you're going to be able to make the most out of each day and each week. And by being smart, you're going to position yourself to sell more, and your job actually will be easier. I mean, if you think about, if I can use a sports analogy and go to football, if you think about a quarterback, if a quarterback doesn't know the set of plays and doesn't know how to read the defense, and I apologize if for those that don't know football, but if the quarterback isn't prepared, they're going to get knocked around and sacked and pushed around. That's not fun. That quarterback's day will be painful, it'll be uncomfortable, and they won't really enjoy it. Now, if you look at the other end of the spectrum, if that quarterback is smart, meaning they're prepared, they know what to do in the different situations that they can anticipate, then they're going to perform well. They're not going to get hit as much. They're going to progress their team, and they're likely to perform well and win. That's fun. So, do you want to be the salesperson that's getting sacked and knocked around and not having fun, or do you want to be if you can bear with me the sports analogy, or do you want to be the Tom Brady, who just is calm, cool, collective, 40 years old, is in perfect shape and performing at his highest level? Which do you find is so economical? But anyways, so here's my info. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. I appreciate you taking the time. And let me see if there are any questions.